Hi, everybody. Welcome back on into Bufnagle, the podcast. I'm Zach. I'm joined today again by my father, Rafe. Rafe, where are you today?
Hey, Zach. I am in warm and cheerful Fayetteville, North Carolina, coming to you from the home office of your brother, my son, Harry.
Uh-huh.
We're visiting this weekend for Labor Day, marking the end of the summer.
Nice. So you're overviewing the Bufnagle aviation setup this weekend?
Yeah, I am. We're here to do the annual flight review and pilot update and maintenance review logs, all the stuff except the legal. We'll
Yeah.
leave that to somebody else. And yeah, we're taking care of everything here on this end in North Carolina and making sure they're meeting standards and not doing anything to undermine the Buffnagle name.
We don't need any bad press.
No, we're just like if I didn't
Incident that we've squashed down a bit. So
yeah, if I didn't have bad press, I wouldn't have any press. So it's all right. It's all good.
yeah. All right. That's good to know. All right. So we got again gonna go through our three topics as always. We're gonna try to get some listener questions at the end of the show, but it should be a good time. Rafe, we had a phone call the other week about the NFL's new playoff structure. This was something I'm really not familiar with. So if you want to kind of talk about those changes and then kind of how it's going to affect the game or maybe the playoff race, especially with this season being kind of confusing given quarantine situations.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So the NFL is always in a state of flux, which is mind-boggling to me as um, the most successful professional sports league in the history of the universe. They're always tweaking with things that seem to be perfect. And when you're at the peak and you try to march forward, it's always down. So you got to be really careful that you're going to march up when you do. But the NFL has decided that it's going to add a playoff team because apparently people like playoff games. And there's something about it, at least in this instance, that I think they haven't quite. Let me say this: I'm not opposed to the addition of the playoff team, but I don't think the implementation is optimal. So I think what you have to do is you have to go back to um,
Your childhood.
my childhood, and you have to go back to history. All right, so I am old enough to be of the age where the divisions actually had names, like the Capital Division, the Coastal Division, the Continental Division, and a Bufnagle Division or whatever it was. And the implementation of the split after the merger, right, led to the current playoff structure, or at least something similar to what we have today. About 20 years ago, they split into the current division format with 4 teams in each instead of having 5 in the NFC Central and 5 in the AFC, whatever it was. So there's 4 teams in all of 8 of these divisions split across 2 conferences, and things are very well balanced. They have a schedule where the good teams play the good teams to create parity. It's a wonderful system. Lots of teams rotate through the playoffs over a given course of time, and that creates interest. And it doesn't result in teams going decades and decades and decades without ever getting postseason
Unless you're the Lions.
experience. Well, unless you're the Lions, and I'll say this. Let me take a little side note on this. I have a little soft spot for the Lions, and I have a soft spot for most teams. Being a Packer household, we have some disdain for the Bears and for the Vikings and the Lions in particular because they are all NFC North teams. But the Lions are man, they just can't win for losing, and it's the Packers beat them. I forget it in Wisconsin for like 18 straight years. The Lions went without winning for until about a year ago, and at some point it gets, you just start feeling bad for them. And anyway, the Lions are the Lions, and they're a little soft spot for them. The Bears are the Bears. It would be just heartbreaking over the last 20 years to be a Bears fan. The Vikings always seem to be a thorn in the side. Um, I can do without the skull chant. That's got to be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. But they got their thing. Packers got cheese heads. That's kind of dumb too. And Bears have Bears are the Bears, and it's it is interesting. It's easy to point to long-term success and pretend that it's there, but it's when you start looking at records, it's there are teams that have had history in different sports, and that history is really old, and it becomes really old really quick if you're a lifetime sports fan like I am, and we'll go into that some other time on some of those things. But back to the playoff division thing. There's 4 division winners in each division, and the schedule is swayed, I guess might be the word, or weighted toward games in the division, which you play almost half of your games in division, 6 out of 16. And so it matters to win your division. And in fact, if you win all your 6 division games, it's really hard to not win that division. I guess you could go 6-10, but it's going to be hard to lose your division if you win all your games in your division. So there's a reward for winning your division, all right? And that reward is you go to the playoffs. And then people said a couple of years ago, what happens if we get an 8-8 team and another team is 12-4 and happens to be behind a 13-3 team? We got to have wild cards. So they started instituting wild card games, and the first wild card would play against the worst division winner. And then they added another wild card, and there were 2 division winners, or two wild cards playing against division winners. And at the current stage where it was until this coming year, the division winners were seeded and ranked in order 1 through 4, and then there are 2 wild card teams, and the worst wild card team had to play the best of 3 and 4 in the divisions, and the best wild card team would play the worst of the 3 and the 4. So there was an advantage that was categorical and ordered across these finishes. The first place team gets a bye in the first round.
Yep.
And gets to play at home until they lose. The second place team gets a bye in the first round, but if they win out, they got to end up playing at the number 1. The 3 doesn't get a bye in the first round, but they get to play the worst wildcard team. And the 4 doesn't get a bye, but they get to play at home, and they play the easier or the worst of whatever it is, the team that's not as good. All right, so there's a very clear ordering, and it's very easy to see that if the ordering is accurate, then there's a benefit gained in each of those steps. And I thought it was a really great thing that the 1 and the 2, they both got the bye, and the only difference was home field. And we know how big that is in the NFL, and so I thought there's a real advantage in home field advantage, right? And there's a real advantage not having to play a game. An automatic win is something anybody will take.
Well, and you get a 16-game schedule over 17 weeks. You get if you're good enough, you've earned another break.
You've earned another break, right? Oh, right. So that week off, so to have to play the 1 or the 2, I mean, the hill is the higher you can get in the seating, the steeper the softer that hill is. So it's still tough, right? It's hard to win in the NFL.
Yeah.
But this year they've added another wild card team. And now the
3 wild card teams and 4 division winners.
Yeah, 4 division winners. So the number 1 still gets all the advantages of number 1, but now there's no longer anybody in that group that has gotten that off week. Right? Everybody plays then in that first weekend except the number 1 seeds. And it seems to me that what that does is that really puts a bigger gap between the 1 and the 2. And I'm thinking you got teams that are finishing 14-2 or 13-3 or 12-4. And if there's a number, there's always a couple of teams over 11 or 12 wins. And I tell you, I don't think that disparity is, I guess this is it. I don't think the disparity between 1 and 2 is sufficient to grant one team a free win and the other one not.
Especially, I think when you're considering, when you mentioned earlier, half your games are played against your division opponents, and if you play in a really weak division, you're getting kind of inflated in that way as well.
Yeah, and the Patriots have been awesome. All right, let's not throw anything. What do they say? Drop shade, throw shade. We're not going to do any of that to the Patriots.
I know a guy who's really good at that.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. But there's uh, but let's, if there are weaker divisions, all right, and there are stronger divisions, and what's going to happen is we're going to get a division winner sometime that's going to get it's going to be 8-8, and they're in a mediocre division. They're going to be playing. They're going to be hosting a. They're going to be the 4 seed, and we're going to have a wild card team that's, I don't know, 12-4, 11-5, and people always complain about that thing. The lesson is this: win your division, win it. Right? You win it, you got nothing to worry about. Right? You're hosting a playoff game. There's something to be said for hosting a playoff game in the NFL. Having to go on the road and win 3 to get the Super Bowl. It's been done 3 or 4 times in the past 20 some years. That's a really tough road to hoe, and it just doesn't seem. It seems like to me like if you finish 1 or 2, yeah, if you're going to give buys, but don't just give one. That's that just seems sickening. So that's and the other thing, we're going to talk about a 17 game schedule coming up, and that is, yeah, that sucks too. So
do you think the team that this is just where my brain goes, that 2 seed, they get an additional home game. They're a very good team. Do you think that additional gate revenue will make any difference?
I keep thinking about gate revenue, and they talk about that a lot. And I try to do the math on that. And I don't know how that works. I'd have to see what's a ticket cost? $100, $150?
Playoff game's probably going to be more.
Is it? I don't know. I mean, when we go to Lambeau and we've watched the Packers, or we've been to Carolina and we've seen the Panthers play, and I've been a couple other places to see some games, and I'm trying to figure out how much revenue they really make from the gate. I would like to really know what that is, because if you do the math, you get 60,000 fans, give or take.
Yep.
Times $100. Okay, if it's 100, I try to do the math here. I'm a mathematician, but I do best when I work with powers of 10. So I got 60,000 fans, and I got $100 a ticket. That's what, $6 million in gate revenue. All right, that's $6 million. Are you kidding me? That's it. $6 million. I mean, what's the budget of an NFL team?
It's massive. It has to be.
Well, look at that. Well, you're paying
in payroll alone for players. We know that number.
Yeah, we do. Right. Now, so I'm not saying it's nothing. It's $6 million, but that's just gate revenue. All right. And maybe that's $100 a ticket. So if it's $200 a ticket, then it's $12 million. It's $150 a ticket, it's $9 million. And I got it. There's parking, there's concessions, there's, big giant foam fingers.
Stuff nobody wants.
And don't forget the concessions guy with stuff nobody wants. And okay, so what are you pulling in? Is it? I can't get my head around how big it is, because just the revenue from the tickets can't be that big. And then you got to pay all those yahoos to be at the stadium selling stuff nobody wants, making sure the cars go in the right little slots, brushing the snow off the seats, cleaning the bathrooms, flushing the toilets. You got to mop up when you're done. You're going to have to spray the whole thing for COVID. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly how much it's worth. Now I'll take $9 million, but I can't imagine $9 million makes a lot. And do they get to keep that whole gate revenue? They got to split some of that with the visiting team. Some of that's got to go to the league. So at some point, I don't know. At some point, I don't quite get that argument that it's worth that much more. Not like a win is. I tell you, you want to increase revenue, start winning, and you put more butts in the seats, and you sell more. You sell more Jadeveon Clowney jerseys and everything, and everybody's just happy all around.
You just win, baby.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I hate quoting Al Davis, but when he's right, he's right. Just win. So
yeah.
Anyway, those are thoughts on the NFL playoff system. That leads me to
just winning leads us to the winningest professional or international team in the history of sports.
Which is the New Zealand Rugbyers, is that right?
It is.
The All Blacks.
All Blacks.
Yeah. So, and what's coming up, if I understand this right, exactly the way you told me, is that there's there's kind of like a big national all-star game that takes place. Well, it used to take place more often. Now it's coming up because of COVID. It's the North-South New Zealand All-Star Game. I'm sure it has a name. It probably has a corporate sponsor. Does it have a corporate sponsor? Maybe it should be the bufnagle.
But it's not us at the time.
It's not us yet. All right, but tell me what's going on with the New Zealand rugby superstar game.
Okay, so we're recording this on Sunday. The game happened on Saturday, or
So it's over.
Friday. Yeah, it happened this weekend. It was a fantastic game to watch. Like high, the skill ceiling of the game was was on par with the ability of the players. Sometimes when you see some of those games, it's you don't get the skill level that you want out of the players. You don't get to see that
Yeah,
talent.
you get half the skill level, right?
Yeah,
Like
you get
the NBA All Star game becomes 165 to
yeah,
130, right? So,
but the game was both teams scored around 35 points. The South won on the last second play. I can talk about that a little bit later. But just like the different players in different positions type things happening. It was very creative on both sides. It was, it was fun. Unfortunately, there weren't any fans at the game.
right. Yeah.
Um, but the
Well,
fact that they were able to play the game is, I think, probably the more important thing.
yeah, so
And then,
let me ask you this. So
yeah,
let me for those people who don't follow New Zealand rugby on a regular basis. So New Zealand is essentially two large islands and a bunch of other little ones. There's a
yeah.
North Island and a South Island, and there are some rugby teams spread across them in a league.
Yes. So there are two leagues in professional rugby in New Zealand. There's the Super Rugby League, which is kind of the equivalent of NFL. There are
So
five.
super rugby, they all wear capes. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
Um,
right. Okay.
Yeah, actually, they did a team up with Marvel superheroes for jerseys a couple years back. So each team was represented by a different superhero. So they had special jerseys made. It was
All right. There's something I would get behind if selling bufnagle jerseys with capes. So okay, so there's super rugby. What else we got?
And then there's the Mitre 10 Cup, which is sponsored by Mitre 10, which is the New Zealand equivalent of Home Depot.
Wait. So
Um,
miter, like cutting an angle accurately, miter,
yeah,
or miter like the hat the Pope wears, or
Mitre like cutting.
like cutting, like a. So it's a hardware store, right?
Yeah,
Miter
it's
10.
the Home
Okay.
Depot of New Zealand.
All right. Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So they sponsor the Mitre 10 Cup, which is a championship um, league of 14 teams, and those 14 teams are spread out across metropolitan areas throughout New Zealand. There are about 5 teams on the South Island and another 9 teams on the North Island because that
So
North Island is just more populous.
yeah. Okay. All right.
But the interesting thing for the selection for the North South game is your selection is not based on which island you are from, where you were born. It was where you made your first professional debut. So if you made your first professional debut with a Mitre 10 team who's playing from the South Island, then you're allowed to be selected for the South Island team, even if you're playing Super Rugby on the North Island team or you were born on the North Island, and same thing, vice versa.
So
With the
this
North
is so
team.
this is the professional team of that league
Yep,
for which you first signed a
appeared,
contract.
appeared, appeared in the game.
You have to be in a game. Okay. All right. Got to be in a
So
game.
So the most interesting thing that came from this North South game was there's two brothers, Bowden and Jordan Barrett, both phenomenal players in their own right. They played together with the Hurricanes team, which is a Super Rugby team, but they actually had different first appearances on the professional level. Jordy played with a South Island team, and then Bowden played with a North Island team. So for the
Wait,
North
the
South
guy's the
game,
guy's name is Bowden Barrett.
Bowden Barrett
Bowden Barrett. Nice. All
and
right. You got it.
Jordy Barrett.
Bodie
Um,
Barrett. All right. Got it.
yep. And then so they were matched up against each other, which is really fun to see kind of two brothers go at it in that regard. Um, but it
And
was a good like even split of talent. It wasn't like one team was had all the starters and the other team had like two. It
well,
was
I got to think though, with the 9 versus 5, that split can't be 9 versus 5, right? When they do the
yeah
North South, they put some North teams have to be assigned to the South bracket or
yep
pool from which the players are drawn.
yeah. So
Okay. Right. And they've been doing this. They used to do this more and they stopped doing it, but this year they're
yeah
doing it because
so
pandemics.
yeah, they're doing it because of the pandemic. Usually, this time frame, New Zealand would be competing in an international tournament with Argentina, Australia, and South Africa. That has obviously been postponed slash canceled. for
Okay.
COVID-related reasons, which created a gap in the professional rugby schedule. So the New Zealand Rugby Board came up with that idea to bring back the North-South game.
So
And
so so how long had they been doing this? I mean, so they did
the
this what in the
North-South game
50s?
dates back to like early mid 1900s.
Oh, really? So like when they had to take boats across the island.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then it kind of stopped with the dawn of professional rugby in the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay. So this all right, and they rotate around cities where they have it, and so it was a and they just decided to have it this year because of the pandemic. Are they
Yep,
thinking of continuing it on, or is
there
that
is
going to go
talk to
away?
bring it back.
Okay.
Um, which is really cool. But what New Zealand Rugby has done with this whole weekend, the North South game was on Saturday. I watched it Saturday at 2 a.m. Um,
Jeez. Saturday morning at 2 a.m. All right, that's
yeah,
why. Yeah,
but
okay.
this whole weekend is kind of like New Zealand Rugby's like they've named their selection team for the 2020 like international team that will be hopefully playing international games later in the fall. So they've
Okay.
kind of made it this big celebration weekend with New Zealand Rugby, of New Zealand Rugby. So it's been
So
fun to
wait, is
see.
there like an all-star competition where they're like, a drop kick competition and
No,
a
unfortunately
ruck
not.
comp?
But
Okay,
a lot of like interviews with players that aren't just
sure.
like about the game. A lot of there's been a lot of like this like what happened in quarantine and COVID and all that situation. How are you going to use that to kind of like be a better rugby player? And some people, they had kids during this time, so they're talking
Sure,
about
sure.
how to be a new father and what they've learned from rugby to be a new father. So it's been this really cool this like behind the scenes look at like all things New Zealand rugby, and it's just like this new access and this new like spotlight is really cool. And then obviously with the new team being selected, um, there are new players who will be playing for the All Blacks for the first time.
Oh,
One of those
wonderful.
players, Will Jordan, he was a wing for the South team. He made the game-winning try. He had another try in the game. He had a phenomenal game. So, like to see like a player of his caliber, who's really skilled and talented, get the opportunity to play on the highest level of New Zealand rugby
Yeah.
with the national team, and kind of like reward it with this all around this whole weekend, has been really cool to see.
So this is his name was again was
Will Jordan.
Will
He
Jordan,
was
and so he's a young guy.
yeah, yeah,
All right, cool.
mid 20s. Really really talented player. Had a really good game on Saturday. So it's these type of things that are really cool to see, and like the way like older players have embraced these guys to the
Is
national team.
Yeah.
Um,
So you watched that on where did you obviously you
on the
didn't go to New
internet, I
Zealand.
found the stream on the internet, and then
Of course you did. So how many do you have viruses now on your computer? I assume.
yes, all of
You
them.
have
I got COVID on my computer now.
you have none of that. You have Southern Hemisphere COVID
Yeah,
on your computer. All right. Well, that's exciting.
yeah,
That these times fly here when we have a little timer. We have a timer going, and we have exhausted our rugby time.
yeah.
We have a little time. We're going to talk next about. There was some discussion after our last thing about time travel, right? Is that we need to address this again?
I think we kind of we discussed Dark and Back to the Future. I mentioned Primer, which is an excellent time travel movie. If you haven't seen it, I do say if you do watch Primer, turn on the subtitles because the audio and dialogue that is picked up is not the best.
And,
But
and there's a lot of subtle stuff that you
yeah,
have to make sure you're hearing, and you're going to have to watch it. You're going to have to watch it. Then you got to go to the Wikipedia page that has the time map on it to see what's going on, and then you got to watch it again. But Primer is phenomenal. I guess I'm watching this dark movie, and it's a very interesting. Well, it's not a movie. It's a Netflix series, and it is at once all of these things. It is at once interesting, at once extremely excruciatingly slow. It is also hilariously funny and very dark and morbid. It is all of these things because I just I'm sure it was a serious attempt, but I gotta
But
say, I'm
you
not.
can't take it seriously
No,
anymore?
I can't take it seriously. It's just okay. So what happens somewhere in the okay? So it's time travel, right? So I can tell you that. And at some point, there's a time travel machine that somebody invents, and it's not clear to me yet. Watch, I'm about halfway through season 2. It's not clear to me if the time machine is what allows the time travel, or if the time machine just magnifies the time travel effect that naturally occurs in these mysterious caves beneath the power plant. So it's not obvious to me, and I'm not really sure I care. But it is funny because what happens at like in Back to the Future, all right, Doc and Marty. Doc makes the DeLorean into the time travel machine, and then Doc and Marty go around in back and forth into the future and back into the past, and they um they have the time machine, all right, and that's awesome, and it's very funny, and it's exciting, and it's just zany fun, and it's great. It does everything it's supposed to do. Even the sequels are good, if not quite as good as the original. Um, but what happens in Dark, I'll throw this right out to you. Like people find out that you can go into the caves and like go in one time and come out at a different time. So people start doing this, and it's like more than one person going back and forth. It's like multiple people traveling through this time portal, and then somebody builds a time machine, which is like a thing that you put on the floor next to you, and it makes this bubble. And when the bubble bursts, you go to another time. So it's a thing. It's a time machine, but then the time machine goes through time with the people. All right. So now the time machine is in the past and in the future and in the present. And like lots of people have this time machine, and the time machine goes around. It's like imagine if Doc and Marty, instead of going back and forth to the future and the past, decided to set up shop and sell time traveling DeLoreans. Right.
Sounds like
And
pretty good business people to me.
well, so then that's the question. All right. So you go back to the Incredibles. If everybody has time travel, all right, then what good is it? What would happen? Right? Because remember, in The Incredibles, we learned that if everybody's super, then nobody is. Right? That isn't that.
We also
That's the
learned
lesson.
how to shoot the lasers in Incredibles too.
The Incredibles is awesome in its own right. But what would happen if everybody had a time machine and time just went back? Like I guess I'm trying to figure out. Well, I guess they do that in Terminator, right? As a lot of people start coming back, and they send all sorts of people back, and then send them further back to stop the guy who went further back than the guy before. It just becomes zany. But
Which we like.
we do like zany. We do like zany. That's why we like college kickers, right? But but that's. I just think the Dark movie is just getting funny. It just gets funny. And there's this one very nice little girl that grows up to be Psycho Woman. And at one point, I'll tell you, like late in season 2, she goes back in time just to taunt. She goes back what's it, not 21 to 80. She goes back 50 years in the past just to taunt the guy that she was having an affair with. I was like, what a psycho bitch. I mean, it's incredible. She was like, well, you know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
She goes back he goes back. Okay, so the kid disappears, goes back in time. They figure out the kids are back in time. He goes back. He steals somehow, goes back in time. He's trying to get the kid. He kills the person who he thinks made the time machine. That person comes back to life because time can't change because the future is the past and the past. Something.
Time travel.
And yeah, because you're right, because time travel. And so she ends up going. He's in jail. She figures out he's in jail in 1950 something in post-war Germany, and she goes back there, and she goes to the psych ward where he is, and she just taunts him. And she goes, "Do you love me?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course I do." She was like, "Screw you." And she just taunts him in jail, and then she was like, "I'm going to come live here in 1950." I was like, "What?" And she took the machine with her. So now she's got the machine in 1950. Somebody else has the machine in 1985. Somebody else has a machine in 2009, whatever it is, 2020. It's just you just can't keep up. And the other part is they never are very clear. It's like watching 2020 or 48 Hours or 62 Minutes, whatever those shows are on the networks, where they kind of reveal very slowly to you a mystery, and they just twist you around by giving you selective facts. That's what Dark does. So I enjoy part of it.
When you came to the realization that time travel, regardless of how serious the show sets up the premise to be, as long as you think it's a comedy, it becomes infinitely better. Is that what we're learning here?
Absolutely. If you can come back to the idea that time travel in itself is a comedy, then the more serious the time travel movie is, the funnier it actually becomes. It was like time travel mathematics in humor form. It is it's good stuff. But you should watch Primer too. But that's the current take on Dark. Is like what would happen if Doc and Marty just decided to sell time traveling DeLoreans? Then
Hey, I'd watch that movie.
we're gonna deal with Biff.
Doc and Marty like in a repair shop, just like, okay, what do we do? And then Marty just like, or Doc gives him the wrong tool. He's like, oh no, this will work, and they just bufnagle everything around. And
if you get the wrong one, what do? You just go back in time and redo it. And so it's just like there's no possibility for any mistakes. You always can correct what you're doing. You got. But I imagine it would be like if they did time travel, it would probably turn into like the guys who invented Google. It was like, yeah, we're going to make sure we never do anything evil, and then they just become evil. It's what do they say, Zach? Power corrupts. Absolute power
corrupts. Absolutely.
Absolutely. There you go. That's right. So, hey, do we have a listener question?
We have 2 listener questions.
Okay.
We actually have 3, but we'll save one of them because that might be a really good topic of consideration for next week. But we'll see from there.
Okay.
So Maria,
it's Maria, listener Maria. Just let's keep her. Yep.
She would like to know. Okay, would we rather be stuck in a car with lions or lick peanut butter off of a stranger's foot during COVID? I'm going with lions every day of the week.
Okay, so let me make sure I got this right. So I'm going to be in a car. So I get to. Do I get to? Okay, so here's the question on these hypotheticals. Do I get to construct any situation that satisfies those criteria, or am I subject to every possible interpretation of those criteria? So, like, I could imagine being stuck in a car with lions. Like, if the lions can be anywhere in the car at any time, then there's a very good chance that the lion will be in the front seat with me and eat me immediately when I get into the car.
Lions are just really big cats, so you just like entertain them and like make them feel loved, and they're falling asleep.
Like, do I get a laser pointer? Because
I'm a lion. I'm rough. I'm tough. I'm king of the jungle. I'm going to hang out with the lions.
I got you. And the other option was to lick peanut butter off the foot of a stranger.
Yep.
Okay, so this is one of those things. Like, if I get to pick the stranger, well, I gotta say. So I never understand about these hypotheticals. It's like they throw something out like this, and if I can fit, like, I can think of some people I'd like to lick peanut butter off their feet, and they are strangers to me. So if I could set up that scenario, that wouldn't be all that bad.
Good point.
But on the other hand, if they get to pick the stranger and the foot, and where the peanut butter is on the foot, I might not do that. So I think I got to go with,
I got the laser pointer.
Wait. Okay, so stuck in the car is a tough one because.
It said the question is, would you rather be in a car, not be in a car?
Okay, so if I got to take the lions, all right, because I'm going to be in the car. I'm going to assume I'm thinking right now I'm in the driver's seat, but anywhere in the car would be fine. But I know the lion doesn't have opposable thumbs, and I got to assume the lion is not very good at car door locks or handles. So I'm thinking I can get out of the car very quickly. On the other hand, if I have to lick peanut butter off the foot of a stranger, it could be any stranger. There's peanut butter on the foot. It could be a lot of peanut butter. And I actually have to remove the peanut butter from the foot with my tongue. I was like, I got to take the lion.
Yeah. Okay. I'm also with the lion. You could also are trucks considered a car in this scenario? Because if that's true, I'll just put the lion in the bed of my truck and I'll just be hanging out.
Well, see, that's the whole point, right? So you're saying that you get to select a situation that matches the criteria of the hypothetical. So if that's the case,
I'm going with the lions and the laser.
Yeah, I know. Well, see, but I got to think. We'll off camera. We'll discuss strangers for whom the peanut butter foot licking thing might be sufficient. But are there baths involved prior to the application of the peanut butter? That's what I would want.
Very good point. Okay, we might have degenerated enough with listener questions. We're not going to get to all of them.
So we have a couple more. We'll save those for.
Couple more. We do have one talking about movies that I think we're both familiar with, as is Harry. the movie
Okay.
Serenity and the movie City Slickers. I think we might need to call in a special guest star to talk about that in
Yeah,
the
I
coming
think I know exactly what we'll do for that one. We'll bring that in. Well, if you have comments on Serenity or on City Slickers, we'll take your comments on that if you want to send in a note. So Zach, how can people get a hold of us if they need to?
They got the Twitter option. We got the email option. We got carrier pigeons, I believe, are up and running. I'm not sure if you took care of that at Bufnagle
Yeah,
Aviation this week or
I'm
not.
having trouble getting the window open.
Okay.
That would explain the pile of pigeons outside on the deck. But that's a but yeah, have people get a hold of us and we'll take that. How's the Instagram page coming?
Oh, I don't think we need our graphic designer. Buffnagel Art hasn't really gotten back to us with that. So,
Yeah, we're Buff Naval Finance hasn't been sending out the check. So
okay.
anyway, we'll get going on that. But contact us on the Twit machine or via email, text message, whatever, however you want to get a hold of us. If you can't get a hold of us and you're listening to us, then hang on a week or so, and we're going to get some official contact information out to you. So other than that, Zach, are we done?
I think we're done here.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week. Have a Buff Nagel day.
Great Buffnagel Day.